The vast halls of the Intergalactic Academy gleamed under the soft light of distant stars. Beings of every shape and color moved with purpose, some walking on multiple limbs, some gliding silently above the ground, and others communicating through sounds or lights that humans could barely understand. The Academy was a place where the brightest minds from hundreds of worlds came together to learn, compete, and prove themselves. It was a place where knowledge meant power, and reputation was everything. Among all these distinguished students, there was one group that drew quiet curiosity, and in some cases, outright amusement. The humans had arrived only a week ago, traveling across the stars in a ship that looked modest by interstellar standards. While the other species flaunted advanced technology and sleek designs, the humans' craft seemed almost old-fashioned. Their clothes were plain, their gadgets simple, and their movements occasionally clumsy. Yet, despite all this, they had a spark in their eyes, a spark that some aliens dismissed as nothing more than stubbornness. Professor Lara stood at the front of her classroom, her tall, iridescent body reflecting the soft lights above. She was known throughout the academy not just for her intelligence, but for her sharp tongue and quick wit. Rumors circulated among students that if she found a flaw in your reasoning, she would point it out in a way that left you both embarrassed and thoughtful. She had taught thousands of students over her long career and had never met a species she found truly impressive. At least, not yet. When the human students entered her classroom that morning, Lara's antennae twitched with amusement. She tilted her head slightly and allowed a small smile to cross her face, though her eyes glimmered with skepticism. She watched as the humans tried to navigate the wide space, their limbs awkwardly adjusting to alien gravity, and their voices rising nervously as they spoke to each other. Among the humans was a small girl named Mia. She was barely 10 years old, with bright eyes that seemed to notice everything, even things the adults around her missed. She clutched her notebook tightly to her chest, as if it were a shield against a world that already seemed overwhelming. Unlike the other humans, she did not stumble over the unfamiliar surroundings. She walked steadily, her gaze calm and focused, as if she had been preparing for this moment all her life. Lara's eyes narrowed as she observed Mia. "How quaint," she muttered under her breath, her voice carrying the faint musical tone common to her species. The other students whispered among themselves, some in sympathy, others in amusement. To them, humans were a novelty, a curiosity meant to entertain rather than to challenge. The lesson began. Lara's voice filled the room, rich and commanding, as she explained the principles of interstellar strategy, a subject that involved predicting the movements of entire civilizations, understanding alien cultures, and developing tactics that could determine the fate of worlds. The aliens in the classroom listened intently, their minds absorbing information at lightning speed. The humans, however, struggled. Their calculations were slower, their understanding not as precise, and their methods often unconventional.
Lara smiled knowingly.
Finally, she decided it was time to address the humans directly, her eyes fixed on Mia. "Child," she said, her voice sharp yet melodic, "tell me, if you were leading a planet under attack, what would be your first move?" Mia's heart pounded. She had read about strategy, she had observed simulations, but she knew her answer would be judged harshly. She took a deep breath and thought carefully. Then she spoke. I would try to understand why they are attacking first. If I know why, I can protect my people without causing more harm." A soft murmur ran through the classroom. The aliens exchanged glances. Some tilted their heads, unsure what to make of her answer. Lara's lips curled into a smile, but it was not a warm smile. It was sharp, cutting, and mocking. "Understand?"
"Protect without action?" she said, her tone dripping with derision. "Child, do you think reasoning alone will save a planet?"
Do you think your fragile little species can compete with those who have mastered the art of war for millennia? Mia swallowed hard. Her small body trembled slightly, but she did not look away. I I think understanding is stronger than fighting, she said quietly. Even if we are small, we can still find a way. Exilera laughed, a sound that echoed through the room like chimes mixed with thunder. The other students laughed too, some openly, some with subtle smirks. Mia's cheeks burned red, but she held her ground. The humans in the room watched silently, some feeling shame, others feeling a quiet pride in their young companion. The lesson continued, but Xylara could not stop herself from picking apart every small mistake the humans made. Their calculations were off by fractions, their methods inefficient, and their ideas quaint at best. She mocked them gently but with precision, making them flustered and uncomfortable. The human students tried their best, but every step they took seemed to invite further ridicule. Yet, despite her words, Xylara noticed something strange. The humans did not give up. Even as they stumbled, they tried again. They observed, adapted, and found ways to solve problems that her own species would have dismissed as irrelevant. She watched Mia carefully. Every time the girl made a mistake, she learned from it, adjusting her approach quietly and efficiently. There was a rhythm to her persistence, a determination that was oddly admirable. After class, Xylara remained in the room, staring at the humans as they filed out. She could not deny that their methods were different from any she had seen before. They were not as precise, not as fast, not as technically skilled, but they were flexible. They could think around obstacles instead of being trapped by rules. They could find solutions in chaos, and they did so with a sense of optimism that was foreign to her species. "Curious," she muttered. "Perhaps they are not as weak as I assumed." Mia lingered at the back, holding her notebook close. She had felt the sting of ridicule, yes, but she had also felt something else, a strange sense of pride. She had spoken her truth, and she had not broken under the weight of mockery. There was a fire inside her that even the sharpest words could not extinguish. As she walked back to her quarters, she glanced at the stars outside the academy windows. They shone with a light that seemed to promise endless possibilities. Somewhere out there, she thought, humans would prove themselves. Perhaps not today, perhaps not in this classroom. But one day, the galaxy would know what it meant to face a human with courage, intelligence, and heart. Meanwhile, Xylara sat alone, pondering the day's events. She had come to the academy expecting to see a species that was amusing at best, a curiosity at worst. Instead, she had seen resilience, creativity, and a quiet bravery that no calculation could measure. It unsettled her, this realization. For the first time in her career, she wondered if she had underestimated a species, if her confidence in alien superiority had blinded her to a different kind of strength. She tapped her claws against her desk, her mind racing. "Perhaps humans are not to be dismissed," she whispered to herself. "Perhaps this child has shown me something that even the oldest records cannot teach." And somewhere deep inside, she felt a spark of something unfamiliar: respect. The academy lights dimmed as the day ended. Humans, despite their apparent weaknesses, had survived another day in a world that was not built for them. And for Mia, that small, trembling girl who had faced ridicule head-on, this was only the beginning. For Professor Xylara, the day had begun a journey of realization. The species she had mocked and laughed at might, in time, challenge her assumptions about intelligence, strategy, and what it truly meant to survive among the stars. And perhaps, she thought with a quiet smile, that was something worth watching. The next morning, the Intergalactic Academy hummed with energy. Students from dozens of worlds gathered in the central training hall, a vast space that stretched higher than the tallest towers on Earth. Holographic projections floated above the floor, displaying maps of distant star systems, planets, and fleets in motion. Today was not a lesson in theory, it was a test. The Academy's instructors had designed a simulation meant to challenge every student's ability to manage resources, think strategically, and protect entire civilizations under threat. Professor Xylara stood at the edge of the simulation room, her arms folded across her chest. She watched the students enter with her usual air of superiority, her antennae flicking in amusement. Her eyes immediately fell on the human group. Unlike the other species, they did not move with confident precision. Their steps were careful, their expressions alert but slightly hesitant. Yet they were not discouraged. They carried their meager tools and simple devices with determination. Mia walked in with the same calm she had shown yesterday. Her small hand clutched a datapad, and her eyes scanned the room carefully. She noticed the other students and the advanced gadgets they carried. Some had devices that could project multiple strategies at once. Others had tools that could predict enemy movements with nearly perfect accuracy. The humans had none of that. They had only what they had brought with them and what they could think of on the spot.
Listen carefully, Zilara said as she activated the simulation. This is not a test of speed, but of survival and strategy. You must protect your assigned colony from invasion. Resources are limited.
Decisions must be made quickly. Failure will be obvious. The projections shifted, and each group saw their assigned planets. The aliens gasped at the complexity of their scenarios. Their colonies were surrounded by hostile forces, and the tools they had were impressive. They had multiple options for attack, defense, and manipulation of their environments. The humans' colony, however, appeared underdeveloped. It had few defenses, sparse resources, and a population that was largely inexperienced in conflict. Zylara's eyes gleamed with certainty. This will be enlightening, she murmured. The other students snickered softly, sharing her amusement.
They expected the humans to fail within minutes. Mia looked at the holographic display and thought carefully.
She could see the alien strategies. Rapid attacks, overwhelming force, complicated maneuvers designed to exploit weaknesses. She could also see her own limitations, minimal defenses, few options, and no advanced technology. Most students would panic at this point, but Mia did not. Instead, she turned to her team of humans, a mix of children and teenagers, and spoke calmly. We don't have what they have, she said quietly. But we do have each other. We can watch, learn, and adapt. We can use our minds, our instincts, and our people. We don't need to fight them with their own weapons.
We need to be smarter.
Her team nodded, and together they began to plan. They studied the enemy movements, looking for patterns. They noticed that the alien fleets always attacked from the same angles, that they relied heavily on technology to predict outcomes, and that they often ignored smaller details that did not fit into their calculations.
Mia realized that their colony's weaknesses could be turned into strengths if they used them cleverly. When the simulation began, the alien teams launched their attacks immediately.
Their strikes were precise, calculated, and devastating. Entire sectors of their colonies were destroyed within moments. Meanwhile, Mia's group moved cautiously, using small diversions, clever traps, and the terrain of their planet to their advantage. They sacrificed a few unimportant units to save the core of their population. They improvised solutions on the spot, combining observation with intuition. Lara watched from her elevated platform, initially entertained by the humans' slow progress. She expected them to falter and fail spectacularly. Yet, as the minutes passed, she noticed something unusual. The human colony was surviving. Not only surviving, but adapting. Every time an attack came, Mia's team responded in a way that the aliens had not predicted. They were not fast, but they were flexible. They made mistakes, yes, but they learned from each one immediately. A particularly challenging moment came when one of the alien teams discovered a weak point in the human colony's defenses and sent a concentrated attack. The humans' resources were stretched thin, and failure seemed imminent. Mia paused for a moment, thinking quickly. She instructed a group of colonists to simulate a retreat while secretly moving the colony's key assets to a hidden location. The aliens, seeing what appeared to be a collapse, assumed victory, and redirected their attention elsewhere.
The humans' plan worked perfectly.
Their colony remained intact, unseen and safe, while the alien fleets moved on to other targets. The other students looked at the humans in surprise, unable to understand how a group so small and under-equipped had managed to avoid complete destruction. Xylara's mouth opened slightly, her antennae quivering with something she had never expected: curiosity. "Interesting," she murmured, almost to herself. She had never encountered a species that could adapt so quickly, think so creatively, and survive under such odds without superior technology. As the simulation continued, the humans' unconventional methods began to turn the tide. While the alien teams relied on predictable logic and brute force, the humans used creativity, intuition, and collaboration. They observed patterns that others missed, anticipated enemy behavior, and improvised solutions that no algorithm could predict. By the end of the simulation, the humans had not only survived, but had managed to stabilize their colony and repel further attacks. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Aliens who had mocked the humans now stared in disbelief. Xylara's eyes were wide, and her tail twitched in surprise. She had been confident that humanity would fail within moments, yet here they were, standing resiliently against overwhelming odds. Mia's team looked around at each other, smiling with quiet satisfaction. They had proven to themselves, and now to everyone else, that being human meant more than technology or brute strength. It meant creativity, determination, and the courage to face challenges head-on, no matter how impossible they seemed. After the simulation ended, Xylara called the class together. She walked slowly to the humans, her expression unreadable. "Remarkable," she said finally, her voice soft but clear. "You have survived where many expected failure. Not because of your tools, not because of your numbers, but because of your choices." Mia blinked in surprise. She had expected more mockery, more ridicule, but Xylara's tone was different. It was as if a veil had lifted, revealing a new understanding. The alien professor had begun to see the humans not as weak or insignificant, but as something entirely unexpected.
"You do not rely on technology the way others do," Xylara continued. "You rely on observation, intuition, and
courage. You think in ways that cannot be predicted, cannot be calculated."
"That is unusual and powerful," the other students whispered among themselves. Some nodded slowly, others looked thoughtful.
For the first time, many aliens were forced to reconsider their assumptions about humanity. These small, seemingly fragile beings had proven something that no amount of technology could achieve: the ability to survive, adapt, and succeed against all odds. Mia felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of pride and relief. She had faced ridicule the day before, and now she had earned a measure of respect. But more importantly, she had seen the beginning of a change, not just in Xylara, but in the way everyone perceived humans. Xylara stepped back, her eyes lingering on Mia. She had seen countless students over her long career, but few had impressed her in this way. The humans had no experience in interstellar combat, no advanced training, and yet they had thrived where others would have failed. There was something about their approach, something she could not yet define, that made them remarkable. As the students left the simulation room, the humans moved together quietly, sharing ideas and observations. Mia spoke softly to her team, encouraging them to reflect on what they had learned.
"We did well," she said.
"But this is only the beginning. There will be more challenges, and we need to be ready. We have a chance to show them who we are, not just as humans, but as a species that cannot be counted out." Xylara watched from her platform, thinking deeply. She had come to the academy expecting to teach, to challenge, and perhaps to ridicule the weaker species. Instead, she had witnessed something extraordinary. Humanity was not perfect. They made mistakes, they lacked the elegance of other civilizations, and they struggled in ways that other species did not. But what they possessed, resilience, ingenuity, and heart, was something she could not ignore. For the first time, she wondered if she had underestimated them. Perhaps, she thought, the galaxy had more to learn from humans than anyone had realized. And perhaps, just perhaps, one small human child had already begun to change everything. As the sun, or its alien equivalent, set outside the academy, the students returned to their quarters, tired but triumphant. The humans had faced a challenge that should have overwhelmed them, and they had survived through wit, courage, and determination. For Mia, the day was proof that even the smallest and seemingly weakest beings could accomplish incredible things. And for Xylara, it was the start of a journey to understand a species she had once mocked, and perhaps to learn what it truly meant to be extraordinary. The academy was quiet now, but in the minds of every observer, the lesson had been clear. Humans were not to be dismissed. They were unpredictable, resourceful, and capable of greatness in ways that even the most advanced civilizations could not foresee. And the galaxy, vast and full of wonders, had only begun to see the first glimpse of their potential. The following week, the Intergalactic Academy buzzed with a different kind of energy. Today was not about simulations or technical exercises. It was the day of the Great Debate, a gathering where students would present arguments about which species was most capable of leading interstellar exploration and diplomacy. The room was enormous, with high ceilings that seemed to stretch into space itself, and it was filled with representatives from dozens of civilizations. Holographic screens projected the faces of distant worlds and fleets, showing the stakes of this debate. Professor Xylara stood at the front, her posture elegant and commanding. She had spent the previous days quietly observing the humans, her mind intrigued and, in ways she did not fully understand, unsettled. Yesterday, their success in the survival simulation had caught her off guard. Today, she was curious to see how they would perform when words, not tactics, would be the instruments of their power. Mia's group entered the chamber cautiously, feeling the weight of expectation pressing upon them. The other students, many of whom had already gained renown for their intellect or military acumen, looked at the humans with curiosity, some with barely concealed amusement. To most of them, humans were still small, inexperienced, and, frankly, fragile. Yet, they remembered yesterday. Somehow, these humans had survived a challenge that should have crushed them. And now, they were about to speak before the entire assembly. Mia took a deep breath and glanced at her team. Her small hands gripped the edges of her notebook, and she felt her pulse quicken. This was different from simulations. Here, she could not rely on improvisation alone. Here, she had to convince an audience that had already underestimated her species, that humans were more than they seemed. The debate began. One by one, species presented their cases, their arguments polished and precise, backed by centuries of experience, advanced technology, and meticulous reasoning. Each speech was delivered with confidence and flair, often accompanied by elaborate visual displays. The audience listened politely, though some eyes drifted toward the humans, curiosity mingling with skepticism. Finally, it was the humans' turn. Mia stepped forward, her heart pounding but her mind sharp. She looked out across the chamber, seeing rows of alien faces, some staring with expectation, others with amusement. And then she saw Professor Xylara, her eyes fixed on the human girl with a curiosity that was almost respectful.
Mia took a deep breath and began. Every species here today has strengths, she said, her voice steady.
We have seen intelligence, technology, and strategy. But there is something more that makes a species ready to explore the stars. It is the ability to face challenges, to adapt when everything seems impossible, and to care about others even when it is difficult. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Aliens exchanged glances, some intrigued, some skeptical. Mia continued. Humans have faced impossible odds, she said, her voice growing stronger. We have survived plagues, wars, and disasters. We have traveled across oceans and deserts, built civilizations from nothing, and learn to cooperate even when our differences seem too great. We are not perfect. We make mistakes, we fail. But we try again, and every time we learn something new. Every failure teaches us how to survive, how to adapt, and how to protect the ones we love. She paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. The room was silent. Even the most confident alien students were quiet now, listening intently. Mia could feel the weight of the moment, but she pressed on. Imagine a species that faces a planet on the brink of destruction. The resources are limited, the enemies are strong, and the rules of technology do not always apply. The species that can survive, adapt, and find a solution in such a situation without relying solely on strength or tools is the species that is ready to explore the stars responsibly.
Her voice softened as she spoke of the struggles of humanity.
Our ancestors were not the strongest, the fastest, or the smartest by every measure, but they were determined. They cared for each other, for their communities, and for the future. They built hope where there was none. They persevered when it seemed impossible. That is the strength of humanity. Not in what we can destroy, but in what we can protect. Not in how we conquer, but in how we survive, adapt, and inspire others along the way. Mia's eyes swept the chamber. She saw expressions change, subtle at first, then more obvious. Aliens who had once looked down on humans now sat forward, their antennae twitching, eyes widening and claws resting silently in thought. Professor Zilara's mouth was slightly open, her body tense as if she could not believe what she was hearing. The words of a small human child had captured the attention of an entire assembly of advanced species. And we will continue to grow, Mia concluded, her voice firm. We will face new challenges, new worlds, and new dangers. And every time we fall, we will rise again. Because we are human. We may be underestimated, we may be small, we may lack certain tools, but we will never lack courage, ingenuity, or heart. That is why humanity belongs among the stars. For a moment, the room was completely silent. Then, slowly, applause began. Not loud, not exaggerated, but genuine. One by one, species clapped, some cautiously, some with clear admiration. Professor Zylara rose from her seat, her expression unreadable. Then she approached the humans, her movements deliberate and careful. "You have done something rare," she said quietly, addressing Mia directly. "You have spoken not from pride or arrogance, but from truth. You have reminded us of something that many of us have forgotten, that courage, determination, and empathy are as important as intelligence and strength." Mia felt a shiver run down her spine. The alien teacher who had mocked her just days ago was now acknowledging the value of her words, of her species. She nodded respectfully, unsure what to say. Zilara's eyes softened. "I have spent my life measuring strength by skill, speed, and calculation. But you have shown me that strength comes in many forms. Today, you have reminded me that the heart and mind together are what make a species capable of greatness." Tears welled up in the alien's eyes, something she had not expected to happen. She blinked rapidly, trying to maintain composure, but the truth of Mia's words had struck something deep within her. It was a realization that could not be undone. Humans, despite their apparent weaknesses, had a strength that was rare and powerful, a combination of resilience, creativity, and compassion that made them extraordinary. The assembly watched in awe. Many had never seen a teacher so moved, especially not one as esteemed and formidable as Professor Zylara. She had been a figure of authority and intellect, yet here she was, touched by the sincerity and courage of a single human child. The moment was not just about words, but about recognition. The recognition that humanity could not be underestimated. Mia's team gathered around her, their eyes wide with admiration and pride. They had come into this chamber as underdogs, mocked and doubted, and now they were standing as proof that courage, intelligence, and heart could triumph even in the most unlikely circumstances.
Xylara took a deep breath, regaining some composure.
She addressed the entire assembly. "Let this be a lesson to all," she said, her voice firm again, but carrying a new depth.
Sometimes the smallest, seemingly weakest beings have the greatest potential. We should never judge a species or an individual by appearances alone.
Humanity has reminded us of that truth today. Whispers spread through the room, spreading from student to student. Humans were no longer a curiosity to be mocked. They were a symbol of perseverance, creativity, and hope. Other species who had come with assumptions now reconsidered what they thought they knew. And in that moment, the balance of perception shifted. Mia felt a strange mixture of relief and pride. She had faced ridicule, survived simulations, and now spoken before the galaxy's brightest minds. She had done her best, and it had been enough to change minds, to inspire even those who had dismissed her and her people. Xylara lingered near the humans after the debate, her eyes thoughtful. She looked at Mia and her small team, realizing that this encounter was only the beginning. Humans had not only proven their strength, they had revealed a new dimension of intelligence and bravery that many species, including herself, had overlooked.
"You may be young," Xylara said softly, "but you have reminded me of something important."
That strength is not always what it seems, and that courage comes in many forms. You and your species have a place among the stars, one that cannot be measured by calculations or tools alone. Mia looked up, a smile forming on her face. She felt a sense of accomplishment, but also a responsibility. Her words had touched more than one mind, and she knew that the journey ahead would be full of challenges, both for herself and for humanity. But for the first time, she felt that humans were seen, not just as fragile, small creatures, but as a species capable of shaping the future of the galaxy. The chamber slowly emptied, but the impression left behind lingered. Aliens who had once laughed at humans now carried a new respect. Professor Xylara walked through the room quietly, her mind alive with new thoughts. She had underestimated humanity, as she had underestimated many species before. But she would not make that mistake again. She had witnessed courage, heart, and ingenuity in action, and it had moved her in a way she had never anticipated. And as Mia and her team left the chamber, she glanced back at the teacher who had once mocked her. Xylara's eyes met hers, and for the first time there was a hint of warmth, of recognition, and of understanding. Humans had proven themselves, not just in survival or skill, but in spirit. The stars outside the academy windows glimmered, vast and endless, and Mia knew that humanity's journey among them had only just begun. The galaxy had seen a glimpse of their potential, and one child's words had brought even the most formidable alien to tears. It was a reminder that true strength came from heart, mind, and courage, and that sometimes the smallest voices could change the universe. And in that moment, humanity was no longer underestimated. They were seen. They were recognized. They were remarkable. After the debate, the atmosphere at the Intergalactic Academy shifted. The hallways were no longer filled with whispers of amusement at the humans' expense. Instead, many students moved quietly, exchanging glances of curiosity and respect. For the first time, the humans were not seen as weak or clumsy. They were recognized as clever, resourceful, and courageous. Mia and her team walked through the corridors with a mixture of pride and humility. They had proven themselves, but they also knew the journey ahead was far from over. Professor Xylara observed from a distance, her thoughts deep and restless. She had spent decades teaching, instructing, and sometimes mocking students of every species, yet the humans had unsettled her in ways she could not articulate. Their resilience, adaptability, and compassion were qualities she admired but had rarely seen in combination. For the first time, she considered that there was more to intelligence than calculation, more to strength than power. The next day, Xylara called Mia to her office. The office was filled with holographic displays, ancient texts from across the galaxy, and artifacts from civilizations that had long vanished. The walls shimmered faintly, reflecting the light of distant stars outside the window. Mia approached cautiously, holding her notebook tightly, unsure what the alien teacher intended.
Sit, Xylara said, gesturing with a slender arm.
Mia obeyed, taking a seat on a chair that felt unusually large beneath her small frame.
Xylara's eyes studied her, a mixture of curiosity and something softer, almost respect, shining in them.
You have done something remarkable, Mia, Xylara began.
You have spoken the truth about your species in a way that even the most advanced beings could not ignore. You reminded us that strength is not only in skill or technology, but in courage, adaptability, and heart. I have spent my life measuring potential in numbers, calculations, and logic. You have shown me that there is more.
Mia blinked, a bit overwhelmed. Thank you, Professor, she said softly.
I just wanted to show that humans can do more than people think. Xylara leaned back, her long fingers steepled together. Indeed, and I would like you to help me.
Humanity has much to teach the galaxy, and I wish to incorporate your perspective into our studies.
You have insight that my records and simulations cannot provide. Will you assist me in designing a program that teaches interstellar diplomacy and problem-solving in ways that rely not only on technology, but also on intuition and resilience?
Mia's eyes widened.
I would be honored, she said. She looked at her team outside the office and imagined the possibilities. Together, humans and aliens could learn from one another, combining different strengths to create something extraordinary. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Mia worked closely with Xylara, designing curricula that challenged students to think creatively and empathetically. Humans contributed their unique problem-solving approaches, using unconventional methods to navigate simulated crises. Alien students, who had once dismissed humans as weak, began to see the value in their perspective. Slowly, barriers of prejudice and doubt melted away. One day, the Academy announced a new simulation, a real interstellar scenario where mixed-species teams would have to negotiate peace between two warring civilizations while ensuring the survival of neutral colonies caught in the crossfire. It was the most complex challenge the Academy had ever offered. Mia's team was paired with several alien students, including some who had openly mocked humans in the past. The human-alien teams were hesitant at first, their approaches clashing. Aliens relied on precision, rules, and careful calculations, while humans used intuition, improvisation, and understanding of emotional dynamics. Conflicts arose, tempers flared, and at one point, one of the aliens declared that humanity would fail yet again. Mia took a deep breath and addressed the group.
Listen, she said firmly but calmly. We may think differently, but that is our strength. If we combine your calculations with our understanding of people, we can solve this together.
Let's listen to each other, adapt, and find solutions that neither of us could alone.
The team paused and considered her words.
Slowly, they began to cooperate. The aliens contributed their advanced tools and strategies, while the humans guided the team in ways to anticipate reactions, negotiate carefully, and respond to unexpected developments. Every step required compromise and understanding, yet the combination proved powerful. Throughout the simulation, Mia's calm guidance and insight inspired the team. At critical moments when alien strategies faltered, human intuition found solutions. When humans faced a challenge they could not see, alien calculations filled the gaps. The synergy was remarkable, and by the end, the mission was not only successful but exceeded all expectations. Neutral colonies were protected, hostilities were reduced, and peace was negotiated in ways that impressed even the most skeptical instructors. Professor Xylara observed the process with growing pride. She realized that humans did not just survive, they transformed the way other species approached problem-solving. Their adaptability, empathy, and courage created possibilities that logic alone could not achieve. The humans had not only proven themselves, they had expanded the understanding of what it meant to be capable. After the simulation, Xylara approached Mia once more. Her eyes were soft, her posture relaxed in a way that showed genuine admiration. "You have changed my perspective," she said quietly. "Not just as a teacher, but as a being who has observed countless civilizations. Humans are not defined by their weaknesses, but by their spirit, their creativity, and their determination. You have reminded me why the galaxy should never underestimate a species that fights with heart." Mia smiled, feeling warmth in her chest. "Thank you, Professor. It means a lot to hear that from you." Lara nodded. "It is rare for a teacher to learn from a student, yet today you and your species have taught me more than many entire civilizations could. You remind me that greatness is not always measured by size, speed, or power, but by perseverance, insight, and empathy."
Humanity has a future in the stars, and it is brighter than many realize.
The students in the hall whispered among themselves. Aliens who had once ridiculed humans now looked at them with new respect, some even with curiosity about how humans would approach challenges next. Humans, for their part, felt proud but also responsible. They had earned respect, but they also knew that the galaxy was vast and full of challenges that would test every quality they had demonstrated. Days turned into weeks, and Mia continued to work with Xylara, teaching alien students about human perspectives, resilience, and approaches to negotiation and survival. Human students thrived under this new recognition, their confidence growing. Yet they remained humble and aware of the work still ahead. The bond between Mia and Xylara deepened. The alien teacher, once mocking and skeptical, had become a mentor and ally, seeing the value of collaboration and the unique strengths humans brought to the galaxy. She found herself inspired by the simplicity yet depth of human problem-solving, the way they could remain calm in chaos, think creatively under pressure, and find solutions where others saw none. Mia, in turn, learned much from Xylara's wisdom, her knowledge of interstellar civilizations, and her understanding of strategy. Together, they developed programs that would be taught across the Academy, ensuring that future generations of aliens and humans could learn from one another and appreciate the strengths each species brought to the table. One evening, as the Academy quieted and the stars outside shimmered like distant fires, Mia looked out over the city below. She thought of Earth, her home, and of the countless humans across the galaxy who might one day reach this level of understanding and collaboration. She felt hope, a powerful, enduring hope that humanity's spirit, courage, and determination could shine across the stars, not just surviving, but thriving. Xylara appeared beside her, silent for a moment, looking at the same view.
"You have done something extraordinary," she said softly. "You have reminded the galaxy that humans are not to be underestimated.
You have changed minds, hearts, and perhaps even the future itself." Mia smiled.
"I just tried to show what we can do." "And you have done more than that," Xylara replied, her voice almost reverent. "You have inspired others, taught lessons that cannot be measured in data or simulations, and reminded us that greatness comes in many forms. Humanity's place among the stars is not given. It is earned through courage, ingenuity, and heart. And you, Mia, have shown the first steps of that path." Mia looked back at the teacher who had once mocked her, who had laughed at her simple answers and small sighs. Now that same teacher stood in awe, moved to tears by the courage, intelligence, and spirit of a human child. The transformation was complete, not just in Xylara, but in the perception of every student who had witnessed it. The Academy had changed. Humans were no longer underestimated, no longer dismissed as fragile or weak. They were seen, respected, and recognized as a species capable of remarkable things. And for Mia, the journey was just beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers, wonders, and opportunities. Humans had proven they could rise to the challenge, survive the impossible, and inspire even the most skeptical observers. And with allies like Xylara and the lessons learned at the Academy, humanity was ready to take its place among the stars, not just as survivors, but as a species that could lead, inspire, and thrive. The stars outside shone brightly, reflecting the endless possibilities ahead. Mia took a deep breath, feeling a sense of purpose and resolve. Humanity had been underestimated for too long. Now it was their time to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. And the journey, she knew, would be extraordinary. In the quiet of the Academy, one thing was clear. The galaxy had witnessed the power of heart, courage, and ingenuity, and it had begun to understand that humans, small but unyielding, could change the course of history, one step, one decision, and one brave voice at a time.